Dan, here we are in the man cave. If you get this film, try and keep my fat head out of the way. You're a genius. I haven't actually watched it all the way through, but I'm going to crack on with my ordinary life video. I haven't done one for 7 months, and I don't know whether people find it. Maybe you think I'm being I don't know, a big head, but I don't about my life, you know what I mean? I'm just doing it for myself. I don't keep saying that, but I'll keep plugging away. Maybe some rudeness in this one, but I'll try and get round it or say it in a way that's not offensive to people. Any other news on the? Oh, got a bit touch of woodworm in here. I've had it before. One of these speakers I've had for years. The woodworm decided to become active, treated the whole area, and I don't know whether I've got a little bit more back, but I've got a plan. I have got a plan. If it does, cleaned up all the sawdust, if it comes back, I've got a plan. I've always got to have a plan, don't I? I've had ant infestations in here. I've had leaks, so yeah, we'll deal with it. Me and Mrs. Stan have been out today to Penshaw Monument. For those who do, I was going to do a video up there. It was too windy. I haven't got a proper microphone. It's in the shape of a Greek temple built by the Lord of Durham. I can't remember now. You have to Google it. But it's an iconic. You always see it in the A19. All the years playing rugby up and down the A19 here, when you'd see it on top of this hill. Greek temple. Never been to it, and we went today for the first time, and reading a bit of the history. A lad fell off it. A 15-year-old boy, 1926. Climbed up the spiral staircase to the top. So after that, it was sealed off. It has reopened, but guided walk. So I never knew that. So there you go, Penshaw Monument, and it's not as big as you think when you go up to it. Anyway, military time, I suppose. I am about to be deluged. Is that a word? Deluged with military, as one of my very close relatives has left the Naval Reserve after 10 years service, and they have a load of kit. And last week we were going to go up to the base in Newcastle and say, there you go, there's all your gear back. My relative phoned them and they went, we don't want all that back, just get rid of it, do what you want with it, which I was quite surprised. I have got a couple of shirts that I may or may not wear on videos for the man cave. It's got the family name on. There was a bit of gaffer tape on there, but yeah, so I'm going to get all this stuff. I have to try and sort through that for my relative, see how we get on with that. The old mate Military Mad did send me a little parcel of kit this week. He sent for like a jungle Malaya setups. I need some other bits. I'm always on the lookout for other bits of kit that I could do another different setup on. So a pair of trousers, 50 pattern. I'm sure they are 50 pattern. 1950 pattern. You see the label there. And apparently these wrap over belt attachments are for when troops go to the tropics, they lose weight. So it's to pull in. I could probably go in the tropics myself for a bit. Anyhow, so that's that, and a nice shirt, which is called an Airtex shirt, so it doesn't sweat as much. Better than those woolen things. God, enough to put you up anything. Mannequins are in different sizes. Some of the ones I've got are very slim, and others are quite muscular. It does, I mean, it's difficult to put certain tight size clothings on them. He also sent me this 44 pattern weapon belt. This is I can't remember the date on this. 1966, and I didn't know. I had to ask him what this was for. This little catch on the side of the belt. Apparently, it's for putting around the rifle. The stock's there. It's on your shoulder, so it doesn't swing about. Put it in there. Didn't know that. And a 1945 dated binocular case, weapon case. I've been looking at these for ages. When you think, a binocular mad, I think I should get one of them. Yeah, I've had a couple in my watch list for ages, and I didn't. So I'm a firm believer in sometimes you want something, it'll come your way. So there you go. Thanks, Military Mad. You're a top bloke. And I have got a video that I've been looking into to do for the Vietnam uniform, or the Vietnam era winter uniform I got from Lancaster. I'm going to go through that, but it takes research, and you know what I'm like. So you might think that I have all the time in the world to play around with military. I don't. I've just bought a gun rack, £21 to put some mediacs in. That's another thing I've got to get on with. But that's why I neglect sometimes my ordinary life videos. It's been nearly 5 minutes now and I haven't started. So I thought, well, I'll push on with it. I'll do one every now and again. I'd rather, if people don't find them funny, whatever, boring, you're being self-indulgent, I'd rather people tell me, get back to doing, military videos. So we'll start. So it's 1992, title of the video. It's got to be 1992. I've been to Australia just to recap, I'd come home, I'd worked on a open cast mine, and I'd worked in Norway, and I was in a relationship with somebody else whose family base was in Perth in Australia. So the grand plan for me and the other person was to go back to Australia, and I'd been, the first year I'd been there, I'd been on like a working visa, so you were allowed 2 years, 18 months, can't remember, to stay, work. There were certain stipulations to it. Usual half-assed thing with me, I should have just got the proper visa, but I didn't try to come back to the UK and sort out this visa, and that's where I was doing it, you know. So I'd been to Norway, I came back because I told them I had to be back for a certain time, certain month, and I'm sure it was to do with the immigration process, and they stuffed me over really. So I was out of work, no dole, no nothing. The partner I was with at the time, she was working, but just in a lower paid job. We had, I believe, started renting a house, a flat. Can't remember the timeline, but I needed a job, and you know, I had the bills to pay for the immigration process, which I think in 1992 was still about 500-600 quid. That's a lot of money, and if you haven't got it, and you want to get back to Australia, so I was looking around, couldn't find anything. And I saw an advert for a little structural workshop down in Thirsk, which is a Yorkshire town, maybe 25 miles away, something 30 miles south. And I rang them up. This is the days before mobiles and stuff like that. And the woman on the phone said, "Oh yeah, we are looking for platers, fabricators. You sound ideal." And I think I might have even said, "You know, I'm only in the country for 6-7 months, and you know, blah blah blah." And she asked, it's only a short contract. I thought, right, that'll do, mate. She said, "I'll just have a word with the manager. I'll get back to you." So I'm sure if we weren't renting a flat, we were living with our relatives or something, and we didn't have access to a phone. Hey, imagine that this day and age. So my parents, they had an answer phone. Nothing for a couple of days. 3 days. We went into the next week. I rang them back. I said, "What's happening with this job?" She went, "I forgot to tell the manager," something like that. Next thing, this bloke comes on the phone. "Can you get down here now? We'll do an interview." So I get in my car, my black 2-litre Sport Capri, goes down to this workshop, and I was quite nervous because I work in a workshop now. I'm a lot older now, I'm more experienced. When you're younger, I'd spent more time on site. Workshops are very different. The amount of work that they want out of you because you're there to get on with the job. It's like being a bench joiner. You're making things there. You're not on site where you've got to rig up your equipment and climb up a ladder, etc. I prefer site work myself if I can get it. But yeah, that's the way life is. So I get to this workshop, and the office was a porta cabin on the side. And there was 2 fellas. I did work with them again in another place years later, and the manager said, "Oh right, so you're a plater, are you?" "Yeah, Boilermaker. Where have you been working?" Told him. Right. And the other fella, he turned out to be a really, really nice bloke, dry sense of humour. But at the time I didn't know him. And he stood there. He had smoke everywhere. A big Super King cigarette. He's looking at me there. I thought, fucking hell. So he goes over this table. It's a set of drawings. And in my line of work, you have to be able to read a drawing to know how it all works out. And the manager asked me, "What's the angle on that?" I told him, "What's this? What's that?" He asked me about a specific tool that people in my trade use. How do you use it? Blah blah. I went, "Oh right." I thought it was a trick question. You did like you do X, Y, and Z. He went, and the other bloke went, and just walked out. I thought, "Oh, bloody hell, I'm not getting the job here." He went, "Right." He said, "I'm sorry for asking you all them questions." He said, "We've had people coming down here who are saying they're tradesmen and they're not. So we ask them the basic questions and they don't answer them right. So can you start tomorrow?" So yeah, I started the next day, and it was a funny little setup, small workshop with some strange characters working in there. There was a couple of lads from our hometown who I worked with, one subsequently quite a lot. The other lad I had worked with him before. Yeah, he'd been a charge hand. The only time I was a charge hand he'd been on there, and he was I'll call him Sid. I think he's still alive, still kicking about. He was a real strange fella. He had a nickname in that factory, Scud. Remember the Iraqi missiles from the first Gulf War? Well, that was his nickname because he was more danger to steal than a Scud missile. And he did have a passing resemblance to a very small version of that former leader of that country, Iraq. And he he was there, and another guy who I got to work with and became quite friendly with on other jobs years later. But there was a couple of shop blasters there. One of the guys, I'll call you the guy Sid. I'll call this one Dave. Call him Dave. I don't want to confuse people's names. So Dave and Sid travelling with me eventually, and Dave had said, "Them shop blasters, grub and scrub, I'm calling them, because they used to turn up in like they both had long hair, like they were in status quo, and they'd both wear like denim jackets, denim shirt, denim trousers." But they'd work in like shop blast, filthy job, and they'd never get changed all through the week. So by the end of the week, they were black. They were absolutely covered in black dust and filth, and they'd go straight to the pub after work. You know, there was another fella in there who he was a lover of the light refreshment more than Stan, like every night. And he drove a three-wheeler Reliant Robin. For those who don't know what they are, if you're not from the United Kingdom, they are a fiberglass three-wheel car. It's to get around the car license. You can drive on a motorbike license. And he came in one day, it was all bashed up the side, and he lived in a nearby village called Appleton Whisk. I said, "What happened to your car?" He went, I'll do the accent. "Coming home from the pub last night, the Yorkshireman, and a kangaroo ran across the road, and I tipped the bloody car over." So on your front wheel. And you might think that's crazy. And he said, "I thought I had too many pints of cider." But there are wild wallabies living in the United Kingdom, and I'm sure there was some in Yorkshire somewhere. You'd have to look that up, but there is wild wallabies. That's probably what he saw on that night in the middle of nowhere. Who'd know? And we were plodding along in this job, so we were travelling together, me, Dave, and Sid. And Sid was a bullshitter. That's the best way to describe him. He'd always black cat me. You know? He'd go on at work, and I remember one day we were watching him, and he built this complicated framework to the drawing, and I said to Dave, "Any minute now there'll be a grinding and a banging and a hammering and him taking it apart when the gaffer checks it." Sure enough, tape measure out. Next thing, bang bang, he's taking it all apart. And I said, "Oh, did you get it wrong? Did you say?" He went, No, mate." He's telling me, No, mate, it's dead right, just the fucking wrong way around." I mean, the gaffer himself used to come up here, and he'd have a big long fag in his mouth, and he'd measure it, and he'd go, "It's a millimetre out, but I'll let you off." And you think, okay. So it wasn't, you know, always trying to get you to work overtime. I was always trying to wriggle out of it, to the point where they actually drove alongside me on the A19 once, because they hadn't been able to catch me in the factory to tell me, and the manager's going like that, because he was from Mass Town. Saturday morning. I'm going, "I can't hear you." Saturday, I had to turn up here. Some jobs, it's what the hours are, and that's it. And back to the two guys I was travelling with, Sid, and he was a braggart, a boaster, a liar. Like I think there's a character in the Viz called Aldridge Pryor, the liar. That's what he reminded me of. So we were coming home from work one day, and I had a black 2-litre Sport Capri. It wasn't my pride and joy. It was the only car I've ever really been interested in, and I'm not really interested in cars. I was young. We were driving along the A19, like the motorway, the freeway, whatever you want to call it. Driving along, the car went past me. I'm not a fast driver by any means. Another one went past me. Anyway, Sid in the back reading his paper, he goes, "If I was in my Capri, that car wouldn't have got past us." And I went, "What Capri? You've got a Capri. You get a lift off me to work." He went, "I've got the 2.8 injection, mate." "Have you?" Yeah. I went, "All right then. Pick me up on Monday morning." "Yeah, will do, no problem." So, Monday morning, waiting, corner the road near where I lived, this little flat I was living in, and he's late. Where the fuck is he? We're not gonna get to work on time. Wait. Next thing, there's a bang, a cough, a bellow, oily smoke, and he comes round the corner in a Talbot Samba. A car that's so far removed from a Capri you could ever, and he was on his own. I got in the car, I said, "Where's Dave?" He went, "Missing in action. He was out on the sauce last night." "Oh, right. So where's the Capri?" He went, "Well, there's a story behind that. I took her down the A19 on Saturday, doing 100 to make sure she was warmed up for this week. Cracked the exhaust manifold, didn't I?" I went, "Oh, did you?" He went, Yeah. See if I can get her back on the road in a few weeks." He never had a Capri, did he? Fucking liar, man. God. But that's what he was like. Another strange incident coming over. This is where it's a bit rude. I was in the front driving. Dave's next to me reading his paper. Sid's in the back reading his paper. Now, Sid's domestic situation was odd. Not odd, but it was not like most people's. He was married to a woman, but the mother-in-law lived with them in a flat. So we're driving along, and Dave's looking at his paper, and he went to me, "What's that?" And the paper, I think Dave used to, it was the Sunday Sport. It was one of those, like, scandal rags he was reading. And the headline said, certain famous actress, won't say her name, likes a certain sexual practice, which I won't mention what it is, but there you go. And I went, oh, right. So I'm driving, I'm looking in the back there, and there's Sid reading his paper. And I went, hey, Sid, have you read that there? And he looks forward, he went, well, yeah, I don't know. And I just said to him, does your wife like doing that then, Sid? He went, what? I said, does your wife do that, like certain sexual practice? He had his paper and he went, no. But her mother loves it. And then he crashed the car. The other lad was just laughing so hard he busted. Because it was just deadpan. Is he taking the piss? Is he lying? Is he? I don't know. But he was a strange character, that fella. And I came to the point where it was coming to the end of my time in Britain for that period. And during this time, the council were trying to get hold of me for my poll tax. And it got to the point where, because the poll tax in the time was you had to pay, you were living with your parents, didn't you? But you were allowed a certain amount of time you'd been in the country. And I'd been on the phone to them and said, I've been out of the country for nearly a year, 11 months, 10, whatever it was. And I said, and I came back, and then I went back to Norway. So my time in the country's been this. I actually am leaving the country. And this woman on the phone basically went, my sister moved to Australia. You can't just get a visa like that. And I said, oh, well, I'm aware of that. I'm going through the process of it. I won't be here in October, November time. You can't say. I had to go down to the council officers and show them my passport that I'd been out of the country. And they were still humming and ahhing whether I should pay when I was in Australia. And I'm just thinking, so you want me to pay poll tax for lighting, collecting the bins, everything else? I'm not even here. They never got any money out of me anyway. So on that one, because I wasn't in the country long enough, I don't think. Anyway, the day finally came, and we left to go back to Australia, Perth this time, which I'd spent a little bit of time at, not a great deal, probably 2 or 3 months, and very hard. It's very hard for me. I've got younger siblings, like really younger siblings, like 20 years younger than me. It was really hard leaving, and we get to Western Australia, and there wasn't a lot of work there at the time. It was pretty difficult. I don't know whether all the years I've been in Australia, I added up whatever it is, 4.5 years. I've never found it where so many people say, "Oh God, they never look back." I've always just been doing normal jobs. And that time in Australia, I think I was in Perth, maybe 4 or 5 months. I'd have to check my passport, my old passport. I've still got it somewhere. And the relationship fell apart. And I think one of the big problems for me was just work. I did work while I was there, but it was just really, really bitty and picky. The first job I had, it was in a workshop, and it was absolutely boiling. It was unbelievable. And they were giving me jobs, and I was doing how I had been taught to do them, and they were watching me do it. And when I'd finished, they'd come up and say, "Oh, we don't do it like that." And I think, like, well, why didn't you? Everywhere I've worked, even though it's the same trade or profession, they have different ways of doing things. And this particular job had a German engineer. I always remember his name, I don't want to say it. He had one arm. And he came up to me, picked up my bit of tooling that I'd made myself, but it was a good bit, and he threw it back on the thing, and he said, "We've had guys come from the UK before like you. You won't last," and all this sort of carry on. You drink at the water fountain too much. It was 30 odd degrees, it really, really. I'd worked in sites in Australia that weren't as hot as these fab shops. It was unreal. My later years when I was in New South Wales and the pipe mill wasn't as bad as I just couldn't stand the heat, really. Perth in the summer, really hard. I found it very hard. There was all sorts of people telling tales on each other. It was a very toxic environment, maybe because there was a lot of people out of work in that industry. There's always that element of people thinking, "Oh, why is he here? why is he a foreign worker, really, you know? So the second job I got there was all the agency work as well. I'd gone to this place, and the fella said, right, you got to, there was a valve needed building up with weld, and they're going to machine it back. And I'd never used this certain weld process before, because in Australia you've got to be more of a welder as well as a fabricator, and I am now, but at the time I wasn't. And I really struggled. And this New Zealand lad, he was doing the other half. He finished at 12 o'clock at night. So this is from 8 in the morning, 12 o'clock at night. I was there at about 4 in the morning, something like that. I finished. I was really, really sick. You know, it's you're in a foreign country. Things probably aren't going the way you want them to. And yeah, I was just pissed off with it all. And then the next job I goes there, and this guy gave me this drawing, like scribbled down on a piece of paper. Again, that's another thing where you can be awkward, can't you, to people without being seen to be awkward. There's this drawing, do that. All right, well, how when do I have this finished by? I'll just get on with it, mate. And I went home at 4 o'clock when everyone else did. Come in the next day, he starts going on at me, this Aussie guy. You should have been here for 12 hours. You never told me that. Well, you should have known. Well, what by telepathy? Fucking hell. So on that job, I was working away. I was on my knees, like marking something off. And this bloke with a big pair of earmuffs on, he went, "Hey, are you a Pom?" I went, yeah. "Where are you from?" And I said, "Oh, I'm from North East." "Whereabouts?" I said, "Oh, 40 miles south of Newcastle, 35 miles south of Newcastle." "Yeah, but whereabouts?" And I said, "Oh, I'm from the town I'm from." And he went, "I am." I went, "What?" He said, "I'm from." I said, "Okay, whereabouts?" And he said, "Oh, and the road," he said, "it's over there, it's just on the other side of this field here." And at the time, I lived just under 200 yards that way. So literally, he'd only been there, he'd been there 6 months or a year. So literally, we'd lived half a mile apart. Funny, I mean, Perth is full of pommy people, and I remember being in the town centre, and the rugby club at the time didn't have a rugby club. It didn't have a proper base. A lot of us used to go to the station pub, and whilst I'd been in England in '92, there was a certain group of lads who were always in there. The football team. I remember I was sat in Perth town centre one day. I looked up, and these 4 lads walked past, and I went, "Here." "Oh, all right, mate. What are you doing here? They were there for a wedding. There's a lot of English people in Perth. A lot of people from this part of the world. And then the final straw for me, work-wise, was I got a job. It was all in Kwinana, I think, which is like a big industrial base, and it was building ore graders, big thick steel fabrications, and I'd never really done much of that. Maybe a jack of all trades, master of none. And I got on the job, and it was loads of lads from the northeast of England and down in Leeds and places like that. And I started travelling with this guy from I can't remember what suburb he was from. He was from Leeds. And he was a really nice lad, a bit older than me, wife and kids. He'd come up there to change his life, as I'd done. Tried it 3 times, and I'm back in England. That was one of them things, isn't it? And I noticed it wasn't long ago. I checked up on his. I can still remember his name now, where he was from. I checked up on his address. He's still there. He was still there 5-6 years ago. So he'd been out there 30 years. Good on him. Well done. He was a nice bloke. And we were at work one day, and what you had to do is go up to the gaffer, say, "What am I doing tonight?" And he'd tell you. And we got to work one day, and basically all the English welders got finished. Like, "Oh, you're finished." So I went up to the gaffer. We used to work over. It was like 3 in the afternoon, 1 in the morning. I went up to the gaffer. I always remember his name. I will say it, because as far as I'm concerned, I'll probably never see him again. If I did, I'd tell him he was a shit bag. He was called the Angel, and he give the jobs out. He said to the welders, "Oh, you're all finished tonight. It's your last night." So I went up to him later on after everything had settled down, and I said, "Oh, look, I won't be working over, because I've given that lad a lift in. He can't get back home, so I won't work over tonight, but I'll be all right for the rest." He went, "Yeah, cool, man, whatever." And I went back to this lad's house for a beer and shook his hand, took his number, and I said, "Oh, if I ever hear of anything, I'll..." And all the northeastern welders, a lot of them have been there 20 years, and they said, "We can't believe how bad the work situation is now. I might go back to Newcastle. It's how bad people were thinking of it." And I'll get to the incident. So where I was living to Kwinana was half an hour's drive, something, 40 minutes. So the next night I go in, a Friday it was, I goes up this angel. I says, oh, what am I doing? He went, oh, you. I forgot to tell you, you're finished as well. I should have told you last night, but I forgot. And he just turned his back on me. And I thought, you absolute, like, begins with a W, ends in R. Like what sort of bloke, what sort of person does that? Even if I was the worst tradesman in the world, which I wasn't, you know, like, just, do you get some sort of kick out of that? I don't know. Maybe, possibly, don't know. But, so like, tails between your legs, Simon. And I remember I drove down to the beach, looking out, thinking, I don't believe this. Because, you know, I'd left England in 91. And when I was in Australia in 91, working in various places, I did find it different. I did find it difficult, but it's obviously different working in another environment to do other ways that people work. But I did get on, found a little bit of work here and there. I come back straight in a job in the open cast mines, and I go to Norway. So, like, I know I'm not a half-wit. I know that I'm capable of doing my job. And all of a sudden you're in a very toxic snake pit environment where there's not a lot of work. And the people running these jobs, was it because I was a POM? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. Don't know really. It's too late to think about that now. But it's. I remember sat on the beach. Sat on the beach. Sat in the car park thinking, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what I'm going to do for work and stuff. Shall I go back to New South Wales with my family and stuff? I did have family in Perth, but they had a young family, so you can't be dropping your problems on them. The relationship I had fell apart. And I rang one of the guys I had been working with, and he said, honestly, there's nothing. I can't help you. I can't even help myself. I'm thinking, right, now, no money left. And I got back to probably the flat the house I was renting, and the phone rang, and it was the agency. Oh, you've been finished, but we've got another. This was like 5 o'clock in the afternoon. We've got a job for you. It's an hour's work back in Kwinana. And I just thought, I'm not driving down there. But it's an hour's work. And I'm thinking, it wouldn't even cover me petrol costs. You know, and I couldn't understand how that agency thing worked. It's in England now. I think because of some of the rules that various governments have put in, 0-hour contracts and stuff. I think it's got a bit better, but you know, that agency thing wasn't a thing up here, or if it was, it wasn't. I hadn't come across it. That ruthlessness of basically just going to someone here, there, go there. You can't live your life like that. It's okay if you're not tied to anything. You don't have bills. You just like sort of free and easy. Yeah, but no good for me. And I basically decided I had enough. I was gonna go back to the UK, and I can't remember. Maybe I cashed the bond in. The car went to the partner I'd been with, and I get to the airport, and they rarely used to check the bags in those days, and the weight, and then they did for this one. I was overweight by a lot. I had to tip it all out and bag it up, and cost me more money. It was like, you know, anything else can go wrong here. So you bear in mind, I'd left my hometown. I'm off, see ya, bye, everyone, I'm going. And 3-4 months later, I'm back again. My dad picked me up at the airport, and he said, there's no work around here. I'm thinking, oh. It must have been a recession, early 90s, 93, must have been. And I got back to Teesside, maybe on the Saturday morning, and with not a penny to my name. And come Sunday morning, gets up, and I don't think my dad was working, I'm not sure. And he's a welder by trade, obviously. And he said to me, are you going to the pub to see your rugby mates? I went, nah, I'm not going to go there. He went, listen, you've tried something out in your life that hasn't worked out. I mean, my dad's not one for, like, he's not an oracle or anything like that. But sometimes he just comes out with pearls of wisdom. He said, you've tried something out, you had plans, it hasn't worked out. That's nobody's fault, no one to blame. He said, you're going to have to eat shovels full of shit before this gets sorted out, before you get back onto some track in life. So you may as well start with your first spoonful with your mates in the station pub down the road. So I thought to myself, I haven't got any money. And he said, well, yeah, I'll lend you some money. It's probably the only time I've ever lent any money off my father. So I goes in the pub, and they're all stood there, and they all went, okay, now look who's here, no bed, that's all. And I had one of the, you know, better parts of my life. I felt all right again, well, at least for 3 hours. Yeah, so then I had to start from scratch again, and the strange strange thing about life, isn't it? I didn't have a job, I didn't have a car, I didn't have anything, and I called in some old favours at one of the only rig yard I ever really worked in, and it was up the road, and I phoned one of the top men who I knew, and he said, well, there's not really much going on, but by some strange twist of fate, his son had been to Canada. He'd done something, me and his son, a similar age, we were in a similar boat, basically. He just come back and he went, I know what the crack is, right, leave it with me. And I got a phone call to go back, and for about, I was only there a few months, which I'll get into in the next video, but for these months I was waiting for me lift, just literally the end of the street. And I always remember, because it was February, March time, so it was still bloody cold. You stood there at 6 o'clock in the morning. I remember it was snowing and raining, and this house on the corner up here, I walk past it now when I go, me and wife go for a meal, or we go for a walk, or I go running with one of my little sisters. I go past it all the time. It's there. They fixed the gutter now, but this house, I always remember stood there thinking, you know, I'll never be able to afford a house. I'll never be able to end up living with my parents for the rest of my life, because I was at the bottom of my little curve in life, you know. Quite a sad, not sad, quite a miserable video that. But yeah, here we are now, 32 years later. I met Mrs. Stan in 1993, and things changed. So yeah, that's 1992. That's me talking for half an hour. That's enough. So that was me coming back from Australia. Oh, we did that the other one. Come back from Norway, getting a job in a little workshop, and then going to Australia again, and it didn't. I have to admit, for even though I don't want to put a negative spin on it, because I spent all them years in Australia over 3 periods, there's got to be something about the place, hasn't there? And there is always part of my heart that'll think about Australia, because I did have times when I really loved living there, when I didn't want anything else. It's probably just that, and I'm split right down the middle. I remember being in a restaurant in Perth thinking, I could never go back to the northeast after this is like in the 90s. I could never go back because this is such a nice place to live. But I don't know. It's like putting a pair of shoes on. I put the shoes on. I can afford them, and they look good. And I could get away walking with them so far, but I couldn't walk down the road 2 miles in them because they kept irritating me. That's how I felt about the whole thing. They should be good. It should feel good. It should. But it didn't, and I don't know why. I could sit here and analyse myself forever, but there you go. Very thoughtful, sort of thought-provoking video from Stan, Ordinary Life 1992. So, and you've had a bit of military at the beginning, and I've got my favourite side cap on, which is yeah, always good. I think I bought this for £1, £2, one of them car boot sales years ago. Yeah, anyway, and it fits me. Oh, you know, it's always a bonus. So here we are. Got our beer, sitting here for the rest of the afternoon, evening, and get half cut. Why not? And this is Stan, and I will see you